Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Davis. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor and national certified counselor with Carolina's Care Partnership. Today's presentation is called The Brokenhearted. Today's presentation will focus on grief and loss. Grief. Grief is a natural, intense emotion to loss. Grief can impact a person's emotions, actions, thoughts, body, and spirituality. A person might ask themselves, what kind of losses might I grieve? A person can experience losses in many different areas, such as illness, divorce, job loss, loss of a home or treasured personal possession, death of a companion animal, being assaulted, whether it's physical or sexually, experience a natural disaster, not achieving important goals, and relationship breakups. Grief can impact the brain. Grief affects your memory and ability to concentrate. The brain gets overloaded with thoughts of grief, sadness, loneliness, and many other feelings. Your brain is focused on the feelings and symptoms of grief, which leaves little room for your everyday tasks. There can be a disruption in hormones that results in specific symptoms, such as disturbed sleep, loss of appetite, fatigue, and anxiety. If you're overwhelmed with grief, it stands to reason that you won't be able to observe your environment the same way you would when you're content. Children and grief. A child may go from crying one minute to playing the next. Their changeable moods do not mean that he or she isn't sad. Children cope differently than adults, and playing can be a defense mechanism to prevent a child from becoming overwhelmed. Very young children may regress and start wetting the bed again, or slip back into baby talk. Older children might become angry, shut down, or act out. Some children will view death as a punishment because of their misbehavior or bad thoughts. Boys may become more aggressive, girls may become more withdrawn. Never force a child to attend a funeral. If your child wants to go, make sure that you prepare them for what they will see. Explain to them that sometimes funerals are very sad occasions, and some people will probably be crying. If there will be a casket, you should prepare him or her for that also. There are five main stages of grief. The first stage is denial. A person may ask themselves, why? Why is this happening to me? They have not accepted or even acknowledged the loss. The second stage is called anger. This is where a person might ask themselves, why me? They may have feelings of wanting to fight back. They may be angry at the deceased and blaming them for dying. The third stage is bargaining. This stage often takes place before the loss. A person attempts to make deals with God to stop or change the loss. They may beg, wish, or pray for their loved one to come back. The fourth stage is depression. A person may feel overwhelmed. They may feel loss of hopes, dreams, and plans for the future. They may feel like they have lack of control. They may feel numb and perhaps suicidal. They may also engage in self harming behaviors. The fifth stage is acceptance. This is when a person has accepted their loss. They're not able to explore options. They're not able to make new plans for the future. They're not able to find the good that can come out of the pain of the loss and are not able to find comfort and healing. The timeline of grief. Grief is very individual. Grieving can depend on who was the deceased, what was the loss, how death occurred, personality, culture, what does the person believe about death and dying, gender, stressors, and support system. Does this person have a great support system or does this person have no support system? can all impact the timeline of grief. Hidden grief is the grief you experience if you do not publicly acknowledge or mourn your loss or receive support from others. Examples of hidden grief include the death of an ex-spouse or former friend, the death of a companion animal, the loss of ability, or death from suicide, AIDS, or criminal crimes. Hidden grief can be used to protect children, the elderly, and individuals of higher power and with higher status within the community. Hidden grief can also leave survivors suffering in silence because grief may not be known or supported by others. A person may ask themselves, what happens when I'm not feeling better over time? Not feeling better over time can turn in complicated grief. This is when grief becomes worse over time. You may find yourself having a hard time accepting the death or resuming life. You're not able to complete activities of daily living. Not feeling better over time can also lead to post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. If the circumstances of your loss were violent or shocking, you may have recollections of the death or loss, nightmares, and flashbacks. Common reactions to grief. A person may experience grief in their body. They may have pains in their stomach, tightness in their chest, as though they was having a massive heart attack, tightness in their throat, oversensitive to noise, feeling that nothing is real, feeling short of breath, muscle weakness, lack of energy, and dry mouth. Spirituality. They may feel they have lost direction in life. They may search for meaning in the loss. They may question their religious or spiritual beliefs. Common reactions to grief continues. Grief can affect a person's thoughts. They may be in disbelief, thinking that the loss did not happen. They may experience confused thinking and have excessive thoughts. Emotions. Grief can affect a person's emotions. They may experience sadness, increase in anxiety. They may become lonely, anger, guilt, or regret about things that they wish they should have done when their loved one was alive. Seeing or hearing the deceased. Action. A person may have trouble falling asleep or waking up too early. Eating too much or too little. Being absent minded, withdrawing from others, dreaming of the deceased, searching and calling out the name of the deceased person, being restless, overactive, crying, and visiting places or carrying objects that remind them of the deceased person. These are all common reactions to grief. Healthy ways to support someone who's grieving. Listen. The first thing you want to do is listen without judgment. Let them talk about the deceased. Help them organize the grief. A person may feel guilty about what they did or didn't do while their loved one was alive. They may feel guilty for not feeling sad enough or moving on too quickly. Encourage them to let go of the guilt and commit to living a life that will honor the deceased. Encourage the person to forgive themselves of the guilt and shame. Remembering to visit the person who suffered the loss often. Taking note of holidays, death anniversaries, and birthdays. Don't overtake the decision making process. Assist. Visit during the weeks after the funeral when others get back to their normal life, but the grieving person cannot. Things not to say to someone who has experienced a loss. At least they're in a better place. They're no longer suffering. I understand how you feel. Grief is very individualized. You shouldn't feel that way. We have no right telling people how to feel. Telling someone to stop crying. It's okay not to know what to say. Sometimes saying nothing is enough. At least she lived a long life. Many people die young. They brought this on themselves. Telling someone to get over the loss of their loved one. Telling someone you're tired of hearing about their loss. Telling them to take down their pictures of their loved one and throwing away the deceased clothes and other items. This should be left up to the survivor. Healthy ways to cope with grief: exercise, making sure you eat a healthy diet to include drinking water, making sure you get quality sleep, at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep, writing letters to the deceased, journaling, allowing yourself grace. Nature is often used to promote healing. Reading books, you can read books on death and dying. Making sure you engage in self-care activities. Self-care is an act of self-love. Support from family, friends, church leaders, and others in your community. Making sure you seek grief counseling, spiritual counseling, or grief support groups if you find yourself experiencing complicated grief. Thank you. I'm Julia Davis with Carolina Care Partnership. I am passionate about social justice when it comes to equality, race, and inclusion.